This is Keys to the Shop, episode number 6, and today is the first of a series called Founder Friday. Hey everybody, and welcome back to Keys to the Shop. Another day, another episode, and this one's going to be a special one because it's the first of a series called Founder Friday. My name is Chris DeFirio. I'm your host for Keys to the Shop. And this is a podcast that's designed to give you insights, inspiration, and the tools that you need to grow as a coffee service professional. So no matter where you find yourself in the industry today, if you're working in a shop, serving people tasty coffee, we want to be a resource and a help to you in your career. And I think today's episode is going to help you gain some perspective from the point of view of an entrepreneur. So Founder Friday. This is the first of a series that we're going to do, and the idea is this. On the last Friday of every month, we'll post an interview with a founder or an owner of a cafe that is respected and they're doing a great work in their community. I have a lot of respect for those who have gone out and established businesses, and they provide a place for the community to experience specialty coffee. Not only a place for us to work, that's a really important part too. We'll not only hear their story, but we'll also learn from their experiences as entrepreneurs and the lessons they've learned along the way. So conversations can run the gamut between staffing and how to overcome obstacles to finances, things like that. You name it. Everything can get discussed. And today, we're going to kick the series off with friends of mine from Syracuse, New York, Taylor and Shem Doupe, who have a new cafe in Fayetteville called Soleil Cafe. I had the pleasure of working with Taylor when she was a manager at a shop in Syracuse we both worked at called Cafe Kubal. And to see her and her husband, Shem, open this new cafe from afar has just been really exciting. So it was really a treat to get to talk to them on the phone about their experience in opening this cafe. They come with the perspective of new business owners and offer some really great insights to people looking to do the same thing, open a cafe, as well as just baristas out there who are trying to find their place in the industry. We're going to get to hear their story and some of the lessons that they've learned along the way being new business owners. So with that, I hope you enjoy the conversation with Taylor and Shem Doupe, owners of Soleil Cafe. Taylor and Shem Doupe, welcome of Cafe Soleil, or Soleil Cafe, rather, right? Is it that way? Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Soleil Cafe in Syracuse, New York, are here with me on the Skype call. We are talking all about their story, opening up a brand new shop in Syracuse, where I'm actually originally from. So this is really exciting. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. We're happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah. So what your shop now is, how it's not a year old yet. How old is your shop currently?
No, it just hit 6 months. It's just over 6 months now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah,
that puts it in May.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So you guys have a special story of, I remember reading in a newspaper article in Syracuse, I think it was the Syracuse New Times, talking about romance brewing. And so tell us a little bit, from the top. I'm sure you've told the story a million times.
I know, we still get questions about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you want the full story or?
Yeah, just give us the story about how, you went from, barista, customer to husband and wife owning a store.
Such a great story. Well, so Taylor was a barista at the time, a manager, and I had just started working for Time Warner Cable, which my building that I worked at was right down the road from her cafe. So I had heard of Cafe Kubal, and I remember looking up online and seeing that there was one right by where I worked. So I was like, oh, I'll swing by there and I'll take a look. So I walked in and Taylor was there, and she happened to be the person who took my order. And I remember thinking, oh, that's pretty cute. I think she's probably just friendly with everyone, but I was like, I feel like she was particularly friendly with me, but maybe, you never know. Like, it's such a barista thing where like, you never know. Like, they're always so friendly. Like, how do they like me? So yeah, I remember thinking, oh, she's pretty cute. So I went back a few more times, and at some point we kind of started talking. We realized we had a few mutual friends, which definitely helped the process along. I kept going back, and we kept talking more and more, and finally I think I asked you to a movie. I think it was The Hobbit. And that went.
It's The Hobbit.
Yeah, it was The Hobbit. Yeah. All right, let's not kid ourselves. So we went to that, and strictly as friends, just went to that to kind of see if we could stand each other for more than 10 minutes alone. So it actually went really well. It was a really fun movie. We talked quite a bit, and then the fun part came after that, because a couple days later or something, Taylor actually asked me out, sort of. She was like, hey, I don't know if you like, what did you say? Was it Mexican food?
Yeah.
It was like a Thursday, and she was just, I went in, got my coffee, as I was regularly doing now, mostly just to see her. And she was like, hey, do you want to get food tonight? I don't know if you're free. And the funny part is, like, I had like a ton of plans that day, and I was like, no, I'm wide open. Immediately started canceling my plans. And then sort of the rest is romantically history. We started dating after that, and any other details you want to add to that?
But one thing that definitely was a continual date that we would go on our coffee dates.
Yes, that's true.
But not
Very
just
true.
in Syracuse. We went to a lot of coffee shops in Rochester, which we'll probably talk about a lot. And we just started tasting coffees.
Mm-hmm.
And so around Syracuse, around Rochester, and it became a really beautiful point of our relationship that we enjoyed, and most people enjoy as they go on dates. And we're romance brews. So yeah. Yeah,
it's particularly fun for me because Taylor had been in coffee for quite some time, but that was really my introduction to coffee was like kind of through meeting her and like seeing her, and then she started to sort of introduce me to the whole thing. And I remember it was actually really funny because as we started texting, I remember one time she goes, oh, you have to try a cortado. And at that point I was like large caramel latte, like the farthest thing from like really tasting coffee. So she's like, oh, you got to try a cortado. So this is like one of my favorite stories. I walked in and Taylor's sister, Emily, was at the register, and I went, I guess I'm supposed to get a cortado. And then she paused and she goes, okay. And I go, I guess a medium. And she just laughed at me. And she was like, they don't come in medium. So that's always a fun story. But yeah. And I remember trying it and hating it. And now it's like one of my favorite drinks. So yeah. Fun progressions.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. So that's basically the dating part of our relationship. Yeah. And then after we got engaged, we just started to talk about things that we're passionate about. And coffee continually was something that I was really passionate about. And then Shem had expressed his interest in business, which I am not passionate about. So the two of us kind of came together, and we're like, you know what? We're young, and we, are not quite ready for kids yet. We're looking to kind of branch out and take a couple risks, calculated risks, but
right.
And that's what we did, and it worked out. So far it's worked out, and it's been a cool growing opportunity for us in our relationship as we learn to communicate with one another. And so not only is it a cool story to tell, but we've also learned a lot through the process as a couple.
And one of the fun things to look back on too, talking about coffee and our relationship, is on that date. I believe it was that date. It might have been for my birthday. I can't remember. One of our first dates, we were out, and Taylor kind of like shyly said, like, it's sort of like a dream of mine and my sisters to open up our own cafe someday. And at that point, we had, known each other a very short period of time. So it wasn't like, oh, that's great, let's get married and do that. So, but I did say, I was like, oh, that's great. You should really pursue that. I was like, and it's funny, like one of my really good friends and I, we always talk about how we want to own a business someday. And then we pretty much never talked about it again until like way later.
Yeah, way after we were engaged.
But it was funny that we both, like when we first met and started dating, had both mentioned that and then like not talked about it, and then it ended up coming up way later. So it's just kind of like a little fun Easter egg that I was like, remember when we talked about that? Like when we first started like talking? It's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. So you didn't have any prior businesses that you had. What is your business experience, or is it just that conversation you had with your friend?
No, so not a ton of I don't know if you consider this business experience, but I used to be a project manager. And in being a project manager, you get to deal with really all sides of the business. And so that really helped me learn what actually goes into running a business.
Mm-hmm.
Because as a project manager, you deal with sales, you deal with shipping and receiving, you deal with the markup of everything. You have to deal with, I forget what the term is, but at the end of the project, you have to figure out, how much you actually made, your budgeted costs and your actual costs. And,
right. Yep.
And so that gave me a ton of experience, and it seemed so mundane at the time. I remember thinking like, this is so dumb. Why is this my job? Like, why should I have to go through and see what I actually made? Like, I just managed the project, Yeah. And, but it was so useful. And so I remember thinking like, now that I fully have a good idea of what happens in a business from start to finish and what makes a business money and all the things that go into it, I was like, I feel like I could do this. And so that was as far as I ever took it, was like, I feel like now that I have the knowledge, I could potentially do it. But I never had the idea, I think. And that was what my friend and I always got hung up on, was like, what would be the business idea that we could move forward with? And
yeah. And I mean, and to be very clear, it's not the business side of everything. It's very complicated. So I don't want anyone to be like, oh, it's so easy to run a business. You just have to have passion. That is like seriously important.
But it is attainable and learnable.
Yeah. But it's also something that you want to discuss with like an accountant.
For sure.
And go over understanding what profit margins and where you're saving money towards taxes and like little things that I don't think right off the bat you're concerned about. You're just concerned about opening. But then like also doing a lot of reading about just like basic business principles is really important.
It's a little stunning at how much there is underneath the surface of serving coffee.
Yeah.
I know, I didn't mention this yet, but I've known Taylor for a number of years from Cafe Kubal, where we had both worked in Syracuse. And you had come on as a barista maybe a year or so into my being there, and quickly made your way up into management, which is no surprise. And I've always said this about Taylor to people, and you can ask them if I can remember who I've told, but that you're kind of like the archetype of the manager that I would want to have in any cafe. And so there's this, when I see you guys in this business, it's just this great synergy of passion and know-how for the things that are needed for a coffee shop. I've, been a barista or in coffee for 17 years. In the last 2.5, I've done one bar shift here in Kentucky. But I feel like, the things that I make aren't lattes and they're not espressos. They're just, they're spreadsheets and, I use a paper cutter really well now.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I love it.
So that rings so true that the business side of things is so deep and you'll always be learning it a little bit at a time each year. Taylor, you had so much coffee experience, and going into the business of opening a shop, how did your experience of being a barista and a manager at Cafe Kubal translate to success in Soleil Cafe?
I have to attribute partly to Shem, because Shem has definitely, if we're talking about business, I learned a lot from Shem. I also learned a lot just in different managers meetings that we had at Cafe Kubal, talking about growth and profit and the difference, and understanding when we have a $1,200 day, that's awesome, but we also could have spent $1,200 in that day, and understanding the difference and markups and all of that still rings true in our industry. So I learned a lot there, and seeing numbers and being exposed to that. And I think that then helped me understand that a little bit more when I then transferred to opening my own place. Like I said earlier, I'm not a business person, and I would never have opened up a cafe if I did not have someone that was interested in that, because I'm not good with numbers. I am just really obsessed with coffee and people. And so if there's one thing that I encourage someone who is interested in opening up their own place is, if they're not, they need to find someone that is, or hire people that can do that, because I think it's that important. Because I don't think that I wouldn't have even opened a place if it wasn't for Shem and his diligence beforehand with the loans and, I don't know, countless paperwork.
Obviously, clearly goes both ways. I would be useless as just someone who knows how to do that.
And
stuff.
It just shows that we all have our strengths and our weaknesses. And there's a lot of things that I learned as being a manager to be a good leader for people. And I think that's also important. You have to be a good leader and lead people well. So I think, that's my strength. Business is not my strength. So,
so coffee and people is what you said is your strength. And how does that balance out the equation for your cafe in terms of knowing where to spend $1,200? We were just talking about, here is a day's expenses. The P&L shows that we have a net profit of X, Y, and Z, right? Your return on value, or maybe it's your return on mission in terms of people, like we're here to serve people and great coffee. How does that passion for people and coffee inform the business side when it comes to just the nitty-gritty operations of the cafe?
That's good. Yeah, I think that listening to people is important. I could think that X, Y, and Z is going to sell really well. And like a certain syrup or a certain whatever, and maybe it does sell, or maybe we're not making as much money, or maybe people are saying they just don't like it and they're not selling. So listening to the customer on that point, because we want to keep things, we have things that we want to do on our side. We want to have artisan coffee, and we don't want to become the next Starbucks, because that's what people are looking for. But we also want to customize their experience and make sure that they feel like they know what they're ordering when they come to the counter. And we've done our part as far as creating pictures and whatnot. But yeah, do you have a better answer for that?
I don't know.
It's a good question.
I don't know if I have anything particular to add.
Just to draw from that a little bit more, people and coffee, just making that the focus. What is it about those two things that is an enduring value for you? Why those? I mean, it's fairly obvious that you're a coffee shop. Not a lot of coffee shops, unfortunately, there are many that aren't really passionate about coffee. And certainly, I think we've all been to coffee shops that are maybe not that passionate about people. What does it look like to be passionate about people? You mentioned listening to people, and I think empathy is such a huge factor as well when you're listening and trying to solve a need or a problem for somebody. What does that look like for you guys to serve well, and how do you arrive at that kind of value?
Yeah, it's funny. We always talk about, like, especially when we first opened, we were talking about like, well, what's our mission statement? And then, we worded it in such a way that sounded nice or whatever, but ultimately it was, we care about the quality of our coffee and our customers. And you can reword that 1,000 different ways, and that's pretty much everyone's mission statement. So it really didn't matter how we worded it, because everyone really says that. Like, anyone who doesn't say that is crazy. Everyone's like, yeah, we're about our customers and our quality. So for us, it was like, well, we have to prove to people that really is what we're about, because everyone says that. And then when people see our mission statement, they'll be like, yes, I agree with that. I remember seeing that, and I definitely agree with that. And so one thing that I have pretty much always said, and I don't know if this will ever change, but I don't suspect it will, is that, a lot of people are like, when are you guys going to start roasting your own coffee or whatever? And I tell people, like, I have not a single bit of coffee roasting passion in me, and maybe that will change in the future, but because the business side of me says it would be a whole lot cheaper to roast my own coffee, but then I feel if I did that, I would sacrifice some of the quality that we have. We use Peaks coffee, which in my opinion is the best coffee that Syracuse offers right now, and we've tried it all, and hopefully no one's offended by that, but that's just our opinion, obviously.
Oh, sure.
So we chose Peaks because we really felt like Sam at Peaks really was passionate about the quality of his coffee. And so that registered with us in what we wanted to bring to the Fayetteville.
And they're in Cazenovia. They're at Cazenovia?
Yep, okay. Peaks in Cazenovia. And so that kind of tells you a little bit about how we didn't want to sacrifice the quality just because of the numbers. And that's one reason. Like, I feel like I would rather make a little bit less money every day by using someone else's coffee and wholesaling through someone else than to sacrifice that by trying to roast myself or hiring someone and it not being that great. Like I said, maybe I'll become super passionate down the road, but for right now, to me, I don't want to sacrifice the quality to make a little bit extra more money, in that way.
Right. Well, you're reinvesting that saved energy into your mission.
Sure.
Yep. And that's going to be what customers ultimately come back for, is the experience that you provide that's really a consistent experience over time. It seems like most people who have a mission statement do just have one because that's what they learned in a Small Business for Dummies book, or that kind of a tick that box. That's what I did. This formula should work. But it sounds like a lot more of a personal mantra for you guys. As far as finding clarity about what your values are, especially in business and owning your own business, I mean, is it something that you just arrived at over time, or have you always known that was going to be the focus of the business, so you know what to say yes to and you know what to say no to? What is the hashtag that you guys use is brew brightness. Yeah. Which I think is great, and people in coffee fits perfectly with that. What kind of a perspective? How does one go about owning and internalizing a mission like that? Is it just is it found just by chance, or did you develop that purposefully?
We definitely developed it purposefully. You should see the notebook I had written down where I was trying to come up with a hashtag or really just a mission statement that encapsulated what we wanted to do. But we really did, before we opened, and like the day before we opened, we sat down with all of our staff and we basically said, like, let's be very clear about what we're trying to do here. We're trying to introduce extremely good coffee to Fayetteville, and we're also trying to, slowly, day by day, potentially change people's lives in the way that we interact with them. Mm-hmm. And I said, so if someone comes back and they're a terrible person and they just keep coming back and saying, this tastes terrible, like, this isn't the way I like it, you just, with a smile on your face, make them another cup of coffee on us, like, it's not about ego. It's nothing like that. It's like, and so we sat down with everybody and we clearly told them that, and everybody was on the same page. And I think that was what was super important. And it wasn't like, all right, we're hiring you guys, so you're going to pretend to like everyone, and and you're going to use this hashtag. And like, we really explained to everyone what our passion was. And Taylor there's no one more passionate about people than Taylor, I swear. Show me one person. Because like even for me, sometimes it's a struggle, especially because before this, I hadn't worked in a customer service or retail environment. And so for me, having to deal with people all day was like, holy cow, this is a lot different than I thought. Whereas Taylor had done it for years. And so even for me, I had to remind myself like, okay, one more person, like this is going to be okay. Like, remember why we're here. And we're trying to increase positivity, not anything else. And so I think it really boils down to, it's kind of who Taylor and I are. And like you said, it's not about checking the boxes and saying like, oh, we're going to provide this and we're going to do this for our customers.
Because you're never going to have everything that everyone wants.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, something we don't carry is sandwiches and things that are have become something that's associated with a cafe.
Yeah.
We wanted to keep it pretty artisan and
Mm-hmm.
create a craft that I'm not saying is lost in this area. I'm just I should say Fayetteville. So though people sometimes get frustrated that we don't have food, I think it's an opportunity to say, well, we have really, this is something we're passionate about. And that's why we are just doing this, is because I want to provide you with the best that we can. And if I would sacrifice something if I tried to also then bring you the best sandwich,
Mm-hmm.
So
it's actually a great point. Going back to like, I can't remember exactly what we were talking about, but just I guess also with the roasting thing, that same point with the sandwiches, and that people are always looking for certain things and not always catering to them because you don't want to sacrifice your quality, is important. I think we've tried, and people for the most part are understanding, but a lot of people just don't get it. They're like, you're not going to make it. You're just trying to do coffee, like we want coffee and sandwiches.
But then it's funny when because I've heard a couple times where people, will walk out because you don't have what they're looking for. But a couple people have come back because they've then heard from their neighbor that we have the best coffee that they've ever had. So it's like, it's fun to bring it kind of full circle, because then they're like, okay, well, so-and-so told me they had good coffee, so I guess I'll go back and try them for that. And I think that's cool. And hopefully it'll just continue to grow. And
I was going to say, I hope that catches on the specifically, getting good at a particular thing and not being worried about like we have a brick oven pizza place that is in Syracuse, and they're now expanding and start to do wings and such. But they were a really good brick oven pizza place, and part of me wishes they would have just kept to that perfect craft. So I hope that catches on. We were just in Montreal, and we went to a donut place, and they do 6 or 9 donuts, 6 or 9 different types of donuts.
And that's all they do.
And that's all they do. And dang, man, I'm not kidding. Those are the best donuts I've ever had.
And that's the thing. They're the best donuts we've ever had, because that's what they created as their specialty.
And they're not trying to split themselves 100 different ways by doing cookies and such. And so,
which is tempting, because like we said earlier, you can make more money that way. We could, but is that potentially. But is that really creating the best for your customer? Is that really the vision that we have for our cafe? No.
Right.
Because honestly, I love food, and I appreciate good food. But I'm not as passionate for that and producing that as I am with coffee. So, yeah.
So there definitely is, the quality side is something that we're both very passionate about. And I guess, I don't know if this answers your question, but it really boils down to just like kind of who we are. We feel very strongly about that, and kind of have always stuck to our guns, and we probably will for as long as we can, financially speaking.
Sure.
But that's kind of where we approach that, and I don't know if that fully answers your question.
Yeah, well, it sounds like as you go, you're constantly keeping yourself in check to what the original vision is, and as you get more successful, I imagine you're just going to continue to learn what it's like to keep that in check. And it sounds like you also have a group of people working for you who share the same vision.
Oh, yes. We're very grateful.
Oh, yeah. That's great. It really is.
Well, how did you go about finding those guys?
Oh, that's a great question.
Some of them they are part of the family. So.
Yes. So since we've opened, we have my two sisters who are just great individuals and who share the same passion for people in coffee as Shem and I do. But we've also thankfully have had to hire other people. And within that, when we were looking, we definitely started with, is there anyone in our group of friends that want to learn how to be a barista? That we didn't necessarily get too much response from that. So then when we sent out that we were looking, one of the major things that I was looking for was just a general interest in coffee. Because in the past, when I have interviewed people, I have had the least success with people that are just looking for a job. And I've hired those people and it has not worked out well because they clock in and they clock out, like you hear. And for a craft like this and for the vision and passion that we have for this area, that is just not going to work. And we're not fit for you and you're not fit for it. It goes both ways.
Sure.
So we were really looking for people that had an interest in learning about coffee, an interest in trying other people's coffees, when they go places to get coffee, tell me what you taste, what you don't like, what you're experiencing. Do you like the environment? Go explore, because keeping it just at Soleil is not good. And if that's one thing I've learned over the last year, is really to expand my, not horizon, but expand my coffee tasting. Before then, I had not really exposed my palate to other coffee roasters. And since then, my mind has been blown because I've enjoyed other people's coffees. And like I said, you're seeing what you like and what you don't like. So I was looking for people like that. And I can teach you how to make coffee, but I can't teach you how to be passionate. And so if that doesn't already come, you can tell in an interview if someone has a general interest in coffee and learning more about it, or if they're just looking for a job.
Yeah, I will say that one thing when we were, so we did actually first find a friend. When we were first looking, we did first find a friend and we did hire her, and she since took a teaching position, so we did have to hire someone else. So I will say that we did start by hiring someone we knew, and that did work out really well. And so when she ended up taking that teaching position, that was when we started thinking okay, we're racking our brains, what friends, because the formula had worked before. We were what friends can we text and see if they're interested, and because it's always easier to hire someone that and a history of, and their work ethic kind of already. And so that was this formula that we were who can we ask? Oh, we're running out of friends to ask, and then we're gonna have to hire someone and we won't know, and they'll be just scary. What if they don't work out? We'll have wasted all this time. And then Taylor and I were talking one night and we were just you know what? I think we need to, what she was just saying, basically, I think we need to start looking for people that maybe don't even have any coffee knowledge, but are really interested in it.
And show a passion about learning.
Which is twofold. Yeah. You're helping someone else into the coffee community and helping them to learn that had no prior experience. Mm-hmm. And then you're getting someone that has that passion. Mm-hmm. So we were that's not a bad idea. So let's just open this up. And that's when we posted on Instagram and said, we're hiring. We're let's open this up to everybody and let's actually start talking to people, and let's get someone maybe from Fayetteville that has no coffee experience whatsoever. Maybe we'll get someone there. And we ended up hiring a girl named Heather, who is awesome and has just been incredible and has learned a ton. And so it worked out, and I'm happy we did that too, just to get someone, to anyone really, whether it was Heather or someone else, to get someone to learn more about coffee is exciting. And so it was good.
Nice. Go Heather. Great.
Yeah, Heather's awesome. Shout out to Heather.
So put yourself back in a place where you're a barista and you're trying to find your place in the industry. You guys have gone down this road of discovery of what is valuable to you, how to gather people around you who value the same thing. There's a lot of self-knowledge, I'm sure, that you guys have undergone during this process. It's hard to know what you want to do in the coffee industry because there's what you think you want to do, and then there's the drink that you need to make right now that distracts you from that. Mm-hmm. What would you tell the barista or the manager, whoever that's working in a shop right now listening to this, that wants to find their passion realized? What can they do right now to start really getting to the core of it and making steps in the right direction?
Definitely, it can be tricky with coffee. Just using our own cafe as an example, Taylor is the manager, which is also the owner, and it's small. It's us, and it's like a total of 5 of us, and I only work on Saturdays, so not a lot of room to move up if you're looking to at Soleil. And so luckily the people we have there are happy and passionate doing what they're doing. But let's say one of them was like, I really want to be a manager, and we're not ready for that as a small cafe. And so it's sort of case by case, depending on where you are and how big your cafe is, how many there are, and what opportunities there are, and based on what you want to do. And so one thing that we always, hope that our employees will do is, if they're interested in something or if they're passionate about something other than what they're doing, that before they go to pursue that elsewhere, they would just bring it up and talk about it and say, hey, I'm kind of interested in this, because who knows what your managers or the owners of your cafe may be planning in the back of their head. Mm-hmm. They may be planning another location. They may be planning, I do actually really want to hire a manager so I can take some time off and do some other things. And so you may be not that far off from what you actually want to do where you are. But the most important thing you can do is just kind of bring that up and express that passion, whatever it is, to either your manager or the owner of the cafe, depending on the size. Because they may have some plan for you that they didn't anticipate just because of the communication that's taking place.
Yeah, and an example of that is Heather. It loves to plan events, and so she is now planning the throwdown in Syracuse, which is really exciting.
Nice.
So it's things like that that's maybe not directly a coffee related thing, but something she's passionate about, and we can then combine that with coffee, and now she's doing something with coffee in alignment with something that she's gifted in. So that not only benefits the coffee community, but benefits her.
That makes a lot of sense. It's so easy to keep those things to yourself and maybe assume that your ambition would be seen as potentially wiggling out of the position you're in now. Mm-hmm. I've certainly felt that way in numerous jobs where I was thinking, I just need to wait until somebody approaches me about doing this. And you get yourself worked up into this state of paralysis where if you had just taken the initiative to do it originally, then maybe you would have been more bold, more opportunities would have opened up to you because you're talking about it. But there's that second guessing, I think, of what is this really important to me, or am I just trying to get out of what I'm doing now, which is kind of a hard.
Yeah, and it could potentially go both ways too. I mean, you could be a manager or an owner and think like, oh, my employees aren't going to want to do this, I'll just do it. But it may be something that they like. We've been putting off planning a coffee throwdown since we opened, just because we've been so busy, and we never would have even thought to ask one of our employees to plan it because we just figured that's not in their job description and they probably wouldn't want to. And so had we potentially thrown that out there to our employees, it would have happened a lot sooner. And so it could go both ways, really. Also, this is sort of a side thing, but I guess communication is key. Mm-hmm. But as far as, I don't know, we got a little off track, but
something else I want to add to that too is continually educate yourself in coffee. And the reason I say that is there are scouts all over the U.S. that are looking for baristas or next level baristas. We have
these
a couple
mythical barista
I know
scouts.
these. I know. They may feel imaginary at times, but they're there. And we have Shem and I have multiple friends who worked in Rochester that were scouted, and people from New York City came and sat there at their coffee bar and said, "We want you. We want you to come work for us in New York City. What do we have to do to get you there? Because we see that you're super passionate, you're super educated, and we want you." And I think that's so cool to see that and to continue to hear about that. So my encouragement is, if you love being a barista, continue to do what you're doing and get to know people, get out of your city and go meet people in other cities in the coffee industry. And something will come up if you're putting yourself out there and people know who you are. You're competing in barista competitions. Yeah, you're going to the SCAA and meeting other people. Don't keep it local. Really expand yourself, and an opportunity will arise if you're passionate.
What is it that, say, I should do if I am that barista who wants to put themselves out there, and then I get headhunted for a job by the scout?
The mythical scout.
So yeah, yeah. They push the envelope across the table. It's got an offer in it, and now not
all the time, Chris.
Not every offer I would imagine is the best offer. And I've certainly had friends who have taken jobs in, say, New York City who have been there for like 4 months, and then they have to go because it was a bad relationship, but it was a good opportunity. And so it kind of brings me back to the vision of who I am or who you are as a barista or as a professional. Like, that you love people and coffee. So if somebody offered you a position that took you away from that or was antithetical to that, you would have to know that up front to know that it wasn't going to work out. How does like a barista who wants to put themselves out there find that, sound cheesy, that true north? What is that?
Yeah.
The guiding star
it's a tough call for sure, but really, if it was me, I would I'd have what my priorities were, and I would try to not sway from those as much as I could if it meant that much to me. It's hard to know, like, if I take this position, am I going to be happy or unhappy, especially when there's a larger number looking you in the face. That's definitely hard to think past that sometimes.
Right.
But it's tough. So, but if you know you, and you know that, man, if I'm not talking to people every day and I'm not making someone's day better, that's what makes me get up in the morning, and I'm not talking to me, I'm talking to Taylor. That's her thing. I don't like getting up at all. So, but for Taylor, if that's the case, and she says, like, the reason I love getting up every day and the reason I love running this cafe, as much work as it is because I get to see people come in, I get to put a smile on their face, and I see them leave and come back the next day. And so if you're not seeing that, and that's what's going to drive you, then I don't think any amount of money is going to, make you happy, even if you're pushing yourself farther in the coffee community. Now, that's not to say that these steps aren't important to your ultimate goal. Let's say you wanted to open your own cafe, and this stepping stone in between, as unpleasant as it may be, may teach you a lot of things. And I have been on some unpleasant stepping stones in my time, as short as it's been. Like being a project manager can be extremely boring and extremely stressful, but without that, I guarantee you I wouldn't be here right now.
Seasons for
sure.
Nice.
These old seasons.
Yeah.
But that's the truth. And so these are hard decisions you might have to make, but I would say, you have short-term goals and you have long-term goals. What are your long-term goals? And is this next step going to get you closer to that long-term goal, even though you have to sacrifice a little happiness for some time? And so they're hard decisions to make, but honestly, I'd say having a long-term goal could be the best decision you make. Set that goal, and then it'll sort of narrow your path a little bit, make it a little easier to decide.
Right. Speaking of goals and next steps, what is next for Soleil Cafe? What is the next step?
Well, okay, so this is definitely a tough question, because we talk about this pretty much every day, trying to decide what the next step is, because we're sort of in the next step still. And so it's hard to think past the next step, and we haven't quite planted our foot on that stepping stone. We are in the midst of planting our foot on that stepping stone. It's hard to open a cafe and be like, all right, on to number 2, you know? So we're trying to really to hone in on what our cafe is, and we've talked a lot about that, you know, making sure customers are extremely happy as much as possible.
Establish ourselves
as what we are, and that is a quality coffee shop that really cares about every single person that walks in. Now, so it's hard to think past that, honestly, and I have no guilt in not thinking
and
past that.
And I say that's almost a beautiful thing, because then we desire, instead of looking like, well, we want to just saturate this or, you know, duplicate ourselves, that would, again, be sacrificing our quality for our customers currently for a financial gain.
Right. Part of the reason Soleil works so well as what it is because of the people there. And so we can't just make another Soleil.
Yeah.
And
nor are we ready.
Even that seems like the most logical step. And we get asked that almost every day.
When are you going to open up in Manlius, which is like 5 miles down the road?
And it's like, yeah. What? But what these people don't understand is that they love our coffee, but they love the people. Like, honestly, they love the people more. You can see it in their face. You can see that people come back and they're like, Taylor, Heather, Emily, Brooke, you know, like, and so to just open up another cafe, it could feel completely different because you're going to have God knows who in there. And, you know, and you, obviously we talked about hiring and everything, but you know, you could not have the same environment. And so it's a tough call for us to just be like, yeah, we're going to just duplicate what we've done here, because there's a lot of steps involved in that.
Oh yeah. It's a living organism.
It really is. It really is. And it's hard to just duplicate something like that. We'd have to properly staff one while taking Taylor to the next one and training and cultivating that same environment. And so there's a lot to it, and it's not something done overnight. But those are things that are definitely in our mind for the future. We've definitely talked about a second location. We have no immediate timeline for that. We admittedly did just come from looking at a location like an hour ago or 2 hours ago or whatever. But that being said, there was nothing in our head that said, you must go to this location, you must start thinking about this. It was more like, oh yeah, we'll come check it out. And so we feel very, very comfortable where we are, and we're okay with that.
Wow.
But we have short-term goals and we have long-term goals, right?
Yeah.
One of the short-term goals, we set, actually, I will say that we set several short-term goals for Soleil, and we even felt so confident in them that we posted them in several articles when we were being interviewed when the cafe first opened. And one thing we said was like, in addition to things we felt comfortable with, in addition to coffee, which is what we started with, we would do fresh waffles every day at some point, and we would start making soups. And we did those two things. And so we hit those short-term goals, and now we have a soup a week, and we make waffles every day. It used to be just Saturdays. And so we set short-term goals for ourselves, and at times it certainly was like,
I don't want to do this.
Do we really want to start making soups right now?
And
we just pushed ourselves, but we set, but we set the goal, and we did it, and we said we were gonna, and we did. And so the what's next for Soleil is sort of tough, because we're hitting our short-term goals, and we still
bottling syrup.
Bottling syrups is one of the next things we want to do, especially for the holidays. We want to jar our cocoa mix. People love our cocoa mix, and so we're like, all right, well, we'll sell it to you then. And so we have these short-term goals, and we're hitting those every day. Well, not every day, but you know what I mean. As the days go on, we're hitting those. And so we have some more short-term goals that we're looking to hit. I would say this is a medium-term goal, but we have honestly a very small amount of debt compared to what it could potentially cost to open a cafe. And we've sort of decided that we don't want to expand really in any way until we pay that debt off. So before we accrue any more debt, or accrue rather, we don't want to move on and gain more debt. So these are short-term goals that sort of are making a long-term goal. I don't know if you want to, more stepping stones, if you will.
So it sounds like you guys have a very healthy perspective on, what your values are, is acting like a compass for the next steps that you have? Like you were, before we asked the question about the next step, we're, talking about goals for people who want to figure out what am I supposed to do now? How do I put myself out there and know that this is the right step? And it's not like you guys have stopped putting yourselves out there, because if you're going to expand or if you're going to improve what you're doing, you're still going to put yourself out there by making a soup or by, moving on debt-free to another location. I know here at Center Goss Coffee in Louisville, Kentucky, we're 13 years old going on, 14. And ever since I got here 2.5 years ago, we've been thinking about a fourth location.
Yeah.
And we don't want to do it just because, and we can, absolutely can. But I am biased towards your perspective because I think it's a shared perspective with the company here. That is, we need to be advanced in a thoughtful and healthy way, being consistent with our own values, and recognize when we're in danger of compromising those values for expediency or, just saying that we did it because the opportunity showed itself.
That's for sure a trap you can fall into.
Yeah.
And it's something we very fortunately kind of felt very briefly when we first opened, and it kind of just went away. And we're really grateful for that. That like feeling of, wow, we're really being noticed right now. And it was like kind of this little buzz. I wouldn't even say it was a high. It was a little buzz. And we were like, this is really cool. And I for a second, we kind of thought like, I really understand now why some people will expand so rapidly. It's because like you get this attention when you do that is great marketing, and it's, it makes a lot of sense in some ways if you can do it and if it makes sense. And so it gave us some perspective. We're like, okay, so now we wouldn't do that, but I guess I understand now why some people do it. And it sort of, it's based on where you are as a company, but it definitely, I was happy that I felt that feeling, and it was enough to where I understood it, but I didn't want to do it. I was like, okay, I get why people do that now, and I don't want to do that. And because it's more than it just, like you said, we'll keep to our moral compass, and we'll keep to what we find important and move slowly. And but yeah, it was interesting to kind of feel that when we first opened, to get that feeling of like, okay, I see that we're really noticed, and a lot of people are talking about us. There's a social media blast. Like, I understand why people would want to, when that dies down, open that next location to get that built back up again, because it feels like, people aren't thinking about me, people aren't talking about me. And so I kind of felt that for a minute, and then I was like, nope, this is good. This is how it's supposed to be. But it was interesting. It was a feeling I'll never forget, for sure.
As we're wrapping up here, this has been incredibly encouraging, and I think your perspective is really refreshing. It's brewing brightness in my mind. It's great. And I hope it's doing that for everyone who's listening to this. And, if you could just see the faces of these guys on my laptop here, that it's not just a tagline. These guys exude passion for their business. And so I'm really thankful to get to have this conversation with you guys. What's the thing that you would love to leave us with in terms of a piece of advice or a mantra that you think could be just life-altering for a barista or a coffee professional who wants a little piece of the kind of thing that you're experiencing right now?
You want to go first? I've got something.
Okay. Everyone says pursue your dreams, but I think it's important to not to think critically and understand what is actually attainable, and what are your passions, but what are also your strengths, and then continue to pursue those, whatever that may be, in whatever capacity, and continue to educate yourself. We can never be too educated. In coffee, there's always something to learn about coffee, and things changing, and keep yourself up to date. And so that would be something that I've learned and continue to learn, to be teachable as well, because we are never going to know everything. So be teachable. And as a leader, especially, you you learn so much from those you work with, and thinking that you've arrived is the most prideful, and it's not a good mindset to have. I have not arrived, and I'm continuing to learn and trying to educate myself in customer service and in coffee. And I think that's important to keep in mind as you continue to grow as a barista. So,
nice.
Yeah. My answer would probably be twofold, but still related, still connected. I would say that it is extremely important for you to set goals for yourself. I've talked about it a little bit, but it really is important, because without at least a long-term goal, you will sort of find yourself every day asking, like, where am I going to go from here? And that could be potentially very devastating for you, and you might end up somewhere you don't want to be. And so I would say, figure out what that long-term goal is. If it's opening a cafe, great. If it's being a manager, great. Like those are all great things. If it's not even in coffee, that's great. Maybe coffee is just a stepping stone for you for something else. There's a lot to be learned in coffee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So find a long-term goal or a direction and point yourself in that direction, and make sure that every day, whatever you're doing is taking your steps towards that. And then find those short-term goals that can give you those steps towards that. And you will find that you will have a great sense of accomplishment when you start hitting and checking off those short-term goals towards that long-term goal. And it'll give you some serious purpose too. And then the second part would be, most importantly, more than anything else, is never get overwhelmed, because it is very easy to get overwhelmed in pretty much anything you do. Coffee, learning about coffee, business, anything. If you remember not to get overwhelmed, you'll remember to take a step back, take a deep breath, and just start checking off the boxes in the correct order. And it will be extremely beneficial for you. When you get overwhelmed, your mind just gets cluttered and you don't go anywhere. And so find the goal, make some short-term goals, and along the way, don't get overwhelmed. Yeah. Take a step back, take a deep breath, figure out what needs to be done next, move on. Mm-hmm. That's my advice.
Yeah. Because I know, before we even opened, I even got really overwhelmed at times. There's a lot going on, but there's beauty in just reminding yourself to take it step by step. Mm-hmm. And overwhelming, it's not going to help you.
There's always a process for everything.
There's always a process.
Just write it down on a legal pad. What's the process? 1 through 10. You'll be fine. Start checking it off. It's that simple. It really is.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, guys. That's excellent advice. And how can people reach out to you, and how can they find you online?
So we have Soleil email addresses. Mine is Shem, Shem, at soleil-cafe.com.
And mine is Taylor at soleil-cafe.com.
Yep.
Soleil is Soleil.
Correct.
That's correct. Yeah, I should have specified that one.
Yes. We're all too comfortable with that.
Yeah, now. Exactly. And then if you want to follow the cafe on Instagram, the lovely Instagram, it's just, I think it's Soleil _cafe.
Okay.
And then on Facebook, it's Soleil Cafe Fayetteville, which is facebook.com/Soleil Cafe Fayetteville.
And you have a website as well.
Yep, that's soleil-cafe.com.
All right. Excellent. Yep. Well, guys, that's going to be it. And I'm really, again, thrilled to have gotten to hear your story. And I'm sure that everyone else that's been listening to this has gotten a lot out of it. Any last shout outs before we go?
Yeah, if anyone is looking down that road and opening a cafe, I know Shem and I would love to talk to you about it. So definitely send us an email. Yeah. If you want words of encouragement or whatever, then definitely I'm all about connecting with people.
Yeah, for sure. So, it's definitely overwhelming. Honestly, all joking aside, it is overwhelming.
Yeah, and I think we learned a lot, and we have a lot of beginning steps that we took that we can share our words of advice. So yeah.
And then shout out to all of our amazing baristas, Emily, Brooke, Heather, love you.
All right. So,
and Karen, we miss Karen. Love you, Karen.
Well, thanks again, guys. And I hope you have a great night and all the best success to you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, take care. All right. Well, there you go. That's the first episode of our Founder Friday series. And really excited to have gotten to talk to Taylor and Shem about their journey opening a coffee shop and what it's been like and the advice that they have for us, especially the advice about sticking to their core values, which is kind of a theme through the conversation there. I think the idea of sticking to your core values is just applicable to everybody in the industry, no matter if you're starting a business or you're working for a business. That's just something that we should all be doing. So amazing advice that we should follow among many other things that were said that were just awesome. So thank you, Taylor and Shem, for your time, for your story, and for your service to the coffee industry as entrepreneurs. And I hope you have many, many great and profitable years as business owners in Fayetteville and beyond. So kudos. If you want to find out more about Soleil Cafe, you can visit their website online at soleil-cafe.com. That's soleil-cafe.com. And you can follow them on Instagram too, at Soleil_Cafe, and see all the pretty pictures of their shop and all the cool stuff that they post there. So if you want to get the show notes too, those are available, as always, on the resources tab of our website, wherein that PDF is simply the major points made by Taylor and Shem. It's a reference for you to be able to access all of the great information shared in these shows. So I encourage you to go and download that as well. So if you like this episode, if you like our show and what we're doing, would you consider going to iTunes, subscribing to the show, and leaving a review or a rating for us? It just helps get the podcast up there in the rankings, and that means more people get to see the podcast, and it would just really help this show out. So thank you in advance for that. If you have questions, comments, or suggestions, you can also reach me at chris@keystotheshop.com. That's just CHRIS@keystotheshop.com. Always love to hear from you. And thanks very much for your time today. Have an awesome one. And as always, just remember to keep being inspired by people and coffee, because they are the keys to the shop.